Ready to get started here, huh? Okay, so let's get started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. As we were just discussing with Jennifer, our program director, we have a lot of Hanukkah programming coming up starting Thursday night. Thursday night, every night, we'll have one of our clergy people doing a video of lighting the Hanukkah candles so you can see how that's done with the blessings. Diane's going to go over the blessings in the second hour with you. And we also have the different programs explaining stuff about Hanukkah, doing Hanukkah cooking, special foods. Most of those special foods involve oil, as I'll talk about a little bit later. And we're also having a cantor's concert on Sunday and a toy drive for the public school we're partnering with, Reynolds Elementary School. We're gonna have a toy drive on Sunday with a fun kind of a Hanukkah drive-by on Sunday. So if you want to come and see everybody dressed up in goofy goofy Hanukkah design and doing some Hanukkah fun things, that's Sunday. Today's topic is Hanukkah, and I'm going to share the screen and kind of go through the handouts. They were put up just this morning, so if you didn't get to see them before, let me see if I'll put the, let me put the link over here. Let me put the link in the chat box for you. There, so hopefully that works. Does that work? Oh, it doesn't appear as a link. Yeah. See, now they have these fancy links that they don't give you the URL, they tell you what it is. So now it doesn't work as a URL when you cut and paste. That's not nice. Let's try. Let me try it this way. Hold on one second. Let's see if we can get this up for you. All right. You have to keep up with the changes in technology. How's that? There you go. All right, so now there's a link to the handout, but I'll be showing it on share screen here. So let's get started. So the first most important thing to know about Hanukkah is it's not an important holiday. That is that in the Jewish tradition, it is not a major holiday because it's not found in the 5 books of Moses, certainly. It's not even found in our Bible. It is found in the Catholic Bible because the Catholics preserved some early Jewish writings that we decided not to include in our Bible. So they included it in the section of their Bible called the Apocrypha, which means the hidden books. They were hidden or left out books because we decided they weren't holy enough to be included in the Bible. Which unfortunately meant that we forgot about them. We totally lost track of those books. But thanks to the Catholic Church, they were preserved originally in their Greek translation, and then, of course, in Latin. And now they're, if you have an English Catholic Bible, they're translated into English. They're in the section of the Bible called Apocrypha. The Catholic Bible has 3 sections: the Old Testament, which we call the Bible, the New Testament, which is the Christian part of the Bible, and then this intermediate set of books called the Apocrypha, the hidden books. And those are books written by Jews during the centuries right before Jesus, maybe into the century after Jesus. Some books that we decided not to include in our Bible, but the early Christian church decided were sacred enough to include in theirs in this section called the Apocrypha. And in those books are 2 books called Maccabees 1 and Maccabees 2, clever names. The Maccabees was the family that fought against the Syrian Greeks, as I'll explain. And those 2 books were written about the time of the events of Hanukkah, which is around the year 168 to 165 before the Common Era. So they're written right as the events are happening, or perhaps even a generation after, but pretty close to when they happen. And they give lots of details about the various battles of the Maccabees against the Syrian Greeks and how they cleaned the temple and so on. So that's where the story is actually found. But again, we didn't keep track of those books. But because it's not in our Bible, it's not a major holiday. Christmas, on the other hand, which comes at the same time of year, is obviously a huge holiday in the Christian faith because it celebrates the birth of Jesus, who is the founder and major personality in the Christian tradition. So of course it's a huge time of year for Christians. Hanukkah became somewhat more important, particularly in America, I think, when Christmas became very important and Jews wanted to have a holiday that could sort of offset the interest in Christmas among Christians. We weren't going to celebrate Christmas, of course, so we had this other holiday, and so we gave it a more prominent view. And of course, in the early 20th century, Christmas became very commercialized. The big department stores found a great opportunity to sell toys and stuff to families. And that's when the commercialization of Christmas really began. As I mentioned here, many religious Christians are not too happy with the commercialization because it takes away from the meaning of the holiday for Christians. But because of that, again, Hanukkah became commercialized also. So if our neighbors are giving presents to their kids, we had to give presents to our kids. And so all of a sudden, Hanukkah became a big present industry. So what I used to say when I was growing up, Hanukkah is an 8-day holiday. Christmas, of course, is only 1 day. And when all my friends were getting Christmas presents and doing the Christmas tree and everything, as a kid, I would say defensively, oh yeah, well, you only have 1 day, we have 8 days. So for whatever that means. In any case, it is an 8-day holiday. And I guess the tradition now is to give kids a different present of some kind each of the 8 days. I grew up in a sort of middle income family. My father was a high school counselor. My mom was a part-time librarian. So sometimes my Hanukkah presents were socks and underwear, but that was the present for the night. But anyway, so that's a little about that. Obviously, not only is Christmas important, it's also has a lot of very warm, happy family traditions associated with it. Gathering around the Christmas trees, singing Christmas carols, setting up stockings, the fireplace, all the, there's lots of Christmas songs. And a lot of traditions like that. We don't have that much in Hanukkah. There's not the same kind of thing. People who are changing religions and adopting Judaism sometimes find it hard to give up some of those things, but they are not really part of Hanukkah or part of Judaism. What we do have is a menorah and a dreidel, which are going to be talked about in those videos I mentioned at the beginning of the class. During the coming week, we'll be talking about how to light the menorah and play the dreidel game and the different foods that we eat. There are things to do. It's just it was not as big a holiday as Christmas. And I think what we tell our kids is, look, we've got Sukkot, where we get to build booths out in the backyard and decorate them and wave the lulav and etrog. We have Purim, where we dress up in costumes and eat triangular shaped cookies. And we have all kinds of other holidays that we celebrate. Christmas is just not our holiday. So we don't have Hanukkah trees. There was for a while some Jewish people who felt like if everybody else is having a tree, we should have one too. So they called it a Hanukkah bush. But really, I think that's kind of appropriating a Christmas and Christian tradition and trying to appropriate it for Judaism. And I think it's not fair to Christians and not fair to Hanukkah. Nobody's going to really think that's a Hanukkah bush. Obviously, we don't have Santa Claus and all that. So, but, and somebody asked me this about a week ago, what about decorating your house with lights? And so this is one thing which I think is really authentically Hanukkah. Hanukkah is already called 2,000 years ago in some Jewish sources the Festival of Lights. mostly because we liked the menorah, and the menorah in the temple was lit. But there's no reason not to call it, not to, I don't think, to decorate your house with lights. If you're going to do it, you want to obviously make sure that people know they're Hanukkah lights and not Christmas lights. So one way you do that is don't use red and green, because those are the colors of Christmas, or associated with Christmas. Blue and white colors are associated with Judaism, especially since the Israeli flag is blue and white. So blue and white lights, or lights that are obviously in the shape of dreidels and menorahs and Jewish stars and other obvious Jewish symbols, people will recognize that you're decorating for Hanukkah, you're not decorating for Christmas. So that's one thing. And in terms of grandparents, this was another question I was asked. So for people who are converting into Judaism, your parents are still Christian, and therefore, if you have children, your children's grandparents are Christian. And again, I think that I strongly believe that family relationships are important, and relationships between grandparents and grandkids is important. So I do recommend bringing your kids over to celebrate Christmas with the grandparents, and you just say, look, grandma and grandpa are Christian, and they're celebrating their holiday, Christmas. So they're certainly going to know about Christmas because it's it's pervasive in the American world during that time of year. So they know that that is what it is. They know that Christians celebrate it. So grandma and grandpa are Christian. They're celebrating Christmas. We're going to their house to celebrate their holiday with them. But we celebrate Hanukkah in our home. So that's how I would recommend dealing with that. So what is the Jewish view of Jesus? I think we've kind of already talked about that, but he is, he was a Jewish person, and he's basically not on our radar scope. He's not part of what Jews talk about. So because his teachings are basically are only included in the sacred books of Christianity. They're not included in ours. So we don't talk about him unless we're doing interfaith dialogue. And of course, he's, as we mentioned before, we do not believe he was the Messiah or the Son of God, and he didn't die for our sins. So Christians are, understandably, this is their faith, it's their holiday, and it's important to them, but it's just not important to us. But we're happy to celebrate with them. Okay, so that's about grandparents. Let's talk about what is the story of Hanukkah. So I mentioned it's in the book of Maccabees in the Apocrypha. It's not part of our Bible. It basically was a civil war. The way we usually tell our kids the story is that after Alexander the Great conquers the world in 330 of before the Common Era, and dies at the age of 30-something, conquers the world and dies young. His kingdom is divided up into different parts. One part is in Syria, in the north of Israel, and one part is from Egypt, south of Israel. The Egyptian part is called the Ptolemies, if you care, and the ones in the Syria are called the Seleucids. And we're kind of in a tug of war with them, depending on which part of that Greek Empire is more powerful. We're either under the control of the Syrian Greeks in the north or the Egyptian Greeks in the south. And the holiday of Hanukkah takes place when the Syrian Greeks in the north are ruling over Israel around the year 168 before the Common Era. And the king of the Syrian Greeks was named Antiochus. Most Jewish kids know the name Antiochus because he's the villain in the story. He's the bad guy. So he's actually Antiochus IV. And he had the brilliant idea of putting a statue of Zeus in the temple in Jerusalem. We had an empty room in our Holy of Holies because we believe God doesn't have a form. God doesn't have a shape. So we don't do statues. We don't do idols, right? So we had an empty room where the central part of our worship took place. And Antiochus decided to put an idol in the temple, the idol of Zeus, and to slaughter pigs as sacrifices to Zeus. And this was two big no-nos in the Jewish world. We don't do idols and we don't do pigs. So although some Jews were very enraptured by Greek culture, there's a lot to like in Greek culture. It was very advanced civilization and science and literature and philosophy, poetry, all kinds of things. There was a lot to like in Greek culture. But some Jews also decided, you know, if there's Greek gods, well, who cares? And other Jews said, no, this is not Judaism. And so they revolted. And that was the Maccabee family, the Hasmoneans, sometimes called the Hasmonean family. They were a family of priests. They led a revolt against the Greeks and kind of guerrilla warfare for 3 years, fighting a very powerful Greek army. This is the same army with the same war technology that conquered the world. And we have bows and arrows and slingshots and swords. And we're somehow fighting against this powerful army. But we managed to defeat them, to kick them out of our country and declare independence. And so that priestly family, when they captured the city of Jerusalem and they captured the Temple Mount, they took the idol of Zeus out of the temple. They cleaned the temple up. They purified it with water and so on, and poured the olive oil on it to make everything ritually pure again. And then they set up that 7-branched lamp that was the symbol of God's presence in the temple, and lit that 7-branched lamp in the temple to indicate that the temple was now functioning as God's temple, not Zeus's, not this idol's backyard. And so they celebrated. And this happened to be on the 25th day of the Jewish month of Kislev, which is, you know, roughly in December. And so they celebrated for 8 days. While we're on the subject of the 8 days, let me just share this screen here and I'll explain why we're doing that. Oh, so the question somebody asked, is it frowned upon even though Christmas trees started as a pagan belief? Yeah, so let me just, I'll mention that too. Many modern Christians, Christians in the modern world who are devout Christians, are sort of rebelling against the idea of a Christmas tree because it probably is the case that the original idea of having a Christmas tree came from a pagan ritual. Trees were worshipped in the pagan world. And the reason trees were worshipped was because they were considered to have a special power. They look like they're dead in winter, and then they come back to life in the spring. They sprout green leaves and bud flowers, and they bloom and they have fruit and everything. So they look like they're dead in the winter and come back to life in the spring. So trees were considered to have some amazing power in the pagan world, and so they were worshipped. And it's believed that the original idea of a Christmas tree may have come from some pagan thing that was adapted for Christian purposes. It's not for me to argue one way or the other. I could easily, if I was Christian, argue that that may have been its origins, but it's now become a symbol of Christianity, a symbol of Christmas, and we're going to celebrate with a Christmas tree because we want that warm family feeling with the mistletoe and everything else. One of my Bible teachers called it the genetic fallacy. The fallacy is that the origin of something is what its value and meaning is to you. Just because it had a different origin doesn't mean you can't adapt it to fit your worldview. Jews have done that as well in different places, and so I don't personally see a problem with Christians I mean, why would I? But if I was Christian, I wouldn't see a problem necessarily with adapting a Christmas tree to Christmas for Christian use. But I think it's a bit, it's a bridge too far to take the Christmas tree and adapt it to Hanukkah. I just think that, to me, doesn't make sense. So, okay. So let's, what was I was gonna show you, so, oops, I was gonna show you something. So I was gonna share the screen. Oh yes, Right. I wanted to show you why we celebrate for 8 days. So the story that we tell for why there's 8 days comes from the Talmud. So this is the Talmudic passage. It's in the tractate called Shabbat, which is interesting. There is no tractate in the Talmud for Hanukkah. That's how unimportant a holiday it was. There's a section of the Talmud that has a separate tractate for each of the holidays, but Hanukkah doesn't get one. Purim gets one, but Hanukkah doesn't. So where do they talk about Hanukkah in the Talmud? They talk about it in the tractate of Shabbat. And why? Because they were talking about lighting Shabbat candles, and so now they want to talk about lighting Hanukkah candles. That's how they, sort of stream of consciousness. So they bring in through the back door, talking about Hanukkah. So here's what they said, and this is the story that's usually told to our kids. On the 25th day of Kislev begins the 8 days of Hanukkah, on which mourning and fasting are ceasing, right? We're supposed to be happy and celebratory. For when the Greeks entered the temple, they defiled all of the oil. And when the Hasmoneans defeated them, they searched and found only one jar of oil with the official seal of the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. In other words, it was only one jar of oil had been untainted by use for pagan worship because it had not been opened yet. It was still sealed. So it was still could be used for holy purposes. Only one jug. It was only enough to burn for 1 day, but a miracle happened and it lasted for 8 days. And that way they were able to produce more olive oil so that they could continue to keep the temple lights lit forever, right? It's supposed to be lit every night. So the miracle lasted for 8 days, and the idea was it was going to take 8 days to get new olive oil. They started the fire anyway, even though it should only have lasted 1 day, but it lasted for 8, and that's the miracle, and that's why we celebrate Hanukkah for 8 days. So in the following years, these days were appointed as a festival on which Hallel was said. Hallel is a set of psalms that we sing on the pilgrimage festivals. Sukkot, the Feast of Booths, Passover, and Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. On each of those pilgrimage festivals, we sing these special set of psalms called Hallel. All right, that's the story that's told in the Talmud, but the Talmud is written around 550 of the Common Era. And as I said, the story of Hanukkah took place in 165 before the Common Era. So almost 700 years later, this is what the story is told. But I mentioned that Maccabees 1 and 2 were written about the time of the events. And here is a short selection from 2 Maccabees chapter 10. Here's what Maccabees said. Maccabeus, that was Judah, one of the members of the Hasmonean family, with his men, led by the Lord, recovered the temple and the city. They demolished the altars erected by the heathens in the public square and their sacred precincts as well. And the sanctuary was purified on the 25th day of Kislev. This joyous celebration went on for 8 days. It was like Sukkot, the Feast of Booths, for they recalled how only a short time before, right, in September, when the Feast of Booths is celebrated, they had kept the festival while living like animals in the mountains, right? We hadn't captured the Temple Mount yet. So we were in the surrounding mountainsides having to celebrate Sukkot outside the Temple Mount. So they carried lulavim, the palm branches, and etrogim, the citron, right? Those are the things you wave on Sukkot, the festival of booths. And they chanted hymns to God. That's the Hallel, those songs, the Psalms of Hallel, who had triumphantly led them to the purification of the temple. And the public assembly decreed that the entire Jewish people should observe these days every year. So the real reason that Hanukkah and celebrated for 8 days is because Sukkot is a 7-day holiday, and tacked on to the festival of Sukkot is another holiday called Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day of assembly. So the 7 days of Sukkot plus the 8th day of assembly makes it an 8-day celebration. And that is the real reason that Hanukkah is celebrated for 8 days. That's why we sing the Psalms of Hallel, because it's like Sukkot, and so on. Unfortunately, that story isn't told often to the kids, so we have to re-educate them when they're adults, and then they don't believe me. But we have pretty good proof that that's the reason it was 8 days long. Why did the Hasmoneans want to celebrate Sukkot 3 months late? What's the matter with them? The answer is they were devout Jews. They read the Bible. They read the book of Kings. And in the first book of Kings, King Solomon builds the temple in Jerusalem for the first time. And he dedicates his temple on the Feast of Sukkot, right? So what the thing is, the Hasmoneans knew that the right way to rededicate the temple to God would have been on the Feast of Sukkot, like Solomon did in temple time, in the Bible times. So they were thinking in September, gee, if only we could capture the Temple Mount, we could sell it, we could rededicate the temple to God on Sukkot, just the way Solomon did. But they weren't able to capture the temple in September, not for 3 more months. And so when they finally captured the temple, they cleaned it up and they decided to celebrate Sukkot 3 months late. And they called it actually the Sukkot of wintertime. And so that was the original reason for doing that. Okay, so let's get back to our, let's get back to our story here. I'm going to share the screen again. Okay, so that's the real reason for celebrating for 8 days. I mentioned that it was kind of a civil war. So there were some Jews who wanted to assimilate into Hellenistic culture. They wanted to become Greek. And there were other Jews who said, no, we like Greek philosophy. We like Greek science. We may even like some of the Greek plays, but we're Jewish. We don't worship their gods. We worship our God. We're monotheists. And so that was the source of the revolt. And we succeeded in winning. So in that sense, the holiday is really important, for, I think, for American Jews, because in many ways, the American culture is very similar to Greek culture back then. American culture is very, very popular now, right? Everybody's watching our movies, our TV shows, our sporting events. It's becoming a little less so now, but it has been, it's dominated the world for decades. People look to America a lot of times for culture. Other countries too, but America is very, very popular. English is the international language still, for a while anyway. And that was the way Greek culture was back then. And there's a lot to commend American culture: freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, a lot of wonderful things that American culture provides us, and we should be grateful and happy about it and participate fully in American society. But Hanukkah teaches us that we also need to draw a line somewhere. We still need to maintain our own identity, even as we celebrate our American citizenship, our Americanism. So we need to continue to worship our God. We need to continue to be faithful to our traditions. And that's what Hanukkah is about. So even though it's not a biblical holiday, it may be in a way the most important holiday for American Jews, because it reminds us of the importance of being Jewish in a very popular secular culture. So I talked about Hanukkah bushes. Where do we draw? And it's about where do we draw the line. Okay. What else? Okay, so the story of the oil that was mentioned in the Talmud, that the oil lasted for 8 days, is the reason why we eat oily foods on Hanukkah. Not very healthy. So we do fried foods, fried potatoes in particular, and not French fries, but typically what's done is they're called latkes. So it's grated potatoes with grated onions mixed with some flour and egg, and they're potato pancakes, and you fry them in a pan. That's a very common Hanukkah food. In Israel, more common is Hanukkah donuts, which are the kind of donuts that have jelly in the middle, the jelly-filled donuts. And why donuts? Because they're also fried in oil, right? So fried foods are a big deal on Hanukkah. Nowadays, I guess we have to eat them a little more sparingly than we used to. At least I do. I do want to say though that although the oil is probably not, the oil lasting for 8 days is not the real reason we celebrate for 8 days, it does highlight a spiritual aspect of the holiday. The idea that the lamp in the temple was relit is significant, and light has all kinds of symbolic meaning, right? Because light can stand for spirituality, it stands for wisdom. In the Bible, those lights particularly are described as a symbol of God's presence in the temple and in our lives. So all the aspects of light over darkness, right, are symbols that are highlighted on Hanukkah, and part of how we highlight them is remembering the story of the oil, even if it's not historically accurate. So you've got this spiritual aspect to the holiday as well as a military aspect to the holiday. And that is sometimes symbolized also by the name Maccabee itself, that family that was called the Maccabees, because Maccabee is sometimes translated as a hammer, which would emphasize the military victory. But the rabbis like to think of Maccabee as an acronym so it's Mem, Kaf, Bet, Yud, right? And so that stands for Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai, Yud He Vav He, right? Which means who is like you, God amongst the mighty, which makes it more of a spiritual victory, the victory of monotheism over paganism, right? I like to point out that had the Maccabees not been successful, Judaism could easily have disappeared at that point. And if Judaism had disappeared, Christianity wouldn't have existed, right? There would be no Jesus, and there would be no Islam, because Islam also borrowed from Judaism and Christianity. So the success of the Hanukkah story is crucial for Western civilization. The three monotheistic faiths wouldn't be here today had the Maccabees not won. So even though I said at the beginning it's not an important holiday, it is an important holiday, and we should be grateful that they succeeded. Okay, so what do you do on Hanukkah? Diane again will talk a little about the blessings in the second hour. The main thing we do on Hanukkah is light the menorah. So in the temple, we used olive oil, of course. And my cousin, who was very Orthodox, so the ultra-Orthodox people like to go with the original. And so he has an oil lamp that he uses. And I think in the, when Dr. Musher, I think, is going to do a tour of our Hanukkah menorahs in our museum case. And a number of those Hanukkah menorahs are also oil lamps. They have little cups that you fill with olive oil, and there's a wick that sticks out and they burn. I bought one of those in Israel when I was there. My cousin, as I was saying, has one. That's what he uses. And I was so impressed with it, I bought one. They look beautiful, but they are a mess to clean. The oil gets all over the place. They create a sort of a black soot on the top of them that you have to clean off. And so now I just use it for decoration. I haven't actually burned it for a while, but they are fun. They're fun. It's oil with a wick. It's a cool thing. But candles, as messy as they are, they're easier to clean up. So most Jews use candles now, and you put them in rows. Let me see if I can actually, I might be able to get you here. Let's, I'm going to share the screen again. I'll show you just a drawing, I guess, because here's the candles lined up in a row like this. So you insert them into the menorah in the from right to left, which is the way Hebrew is read, right? Hebrew goes from right to left. So this is the first candle, this is the second candle, the third candle, the fourth candle, and the shamus is, the user candle is over here. You insert them into the menorah in the order of the days, and you light one extra candle every day. So the first day you only light one candle. The second day you light two candles. You put them in the first two slots. Third day, the first three slots, and so on until the eighth day when you have all 8 candles put in. but you light the candles in the reverse order. And the reason for that is you're lighting the candle for that day first. So if it's the 8th day, you want to light the 8th candle first. So you put them into the menorah going right to left, and you light them from left to right. And then somebody's going to ask me, because I used to ask, which direction, right? If you put it, for instance, in the window in your living room, by the way, if you're going to put it in the window in your living room, make sure the drapes aren't anywhere near it. Just a safety hazard there. But the idea would be to put it in the window so people can see it from the outside. But now the question is, if you're putting it in the window, which direction is going right to left? The way you look at the candles when you're lighting them, or the way people see them from the outside of the window, which would be the opposite direction? And so I can tell you the answer to that question because I actually looked it up. So the answer is, if you're putting it in the window, you want it to be in the order that it'll be seen from the street. But if you're not putting it in the window, if you're just in your house somewhere, then you want it to be in the order that you will look at them when you're looking at the candles. So probably the way you're in the order on the side you're lighting them on, right? Which would be the normal way. What else can I tell you about that? The candles are supposed to burn for about a half an hour. Of course, we're a religion of rules, right? So we had to define everything. How long do the candles have to burn? They have to burn for at least a half an hour after it's dark outside. So you wait till it's dark, you light the candles, they have to burn for about a half an hour. You don't really need to worry about this if you buy a box of Hanukkah candles, because they're all designed to last a half an hour. They're made to last a half an hour. But if you're, using other candles, you just need to burn for at least a half an hour. How late can all these questions, right? How late can you light the Hanukkah candles? Well, you're supposed to light them while there's still people driving on the road at night or passing by at night. So light them before people go to sleep. Let's say before midnight, generally speaking. That's when you should light them, while people are still up. So people can see the candles. That's the point of them. What else? And then there's a tricky little thing about Shabbat. Shabbat candles are supposed to last for 4 hours. And the reason for that is those candles are designed to bring light into your home while you're eating dinner. This is before electricity, right? People used to use candles or oil lamps. And so the purpose of the Shabbat candles or lamps was to light up your living room the way electric lights do today. And so you wanted to light up your room for you to have a leisurely dinner after you come home from synagogue or after the evening service. So you want them to last about 4 hours. And Shabbat candles are not supposed to be lit after it's dark outside, right? Because then it's Shabbat already and you're not allowed to light a candle. So the idea is you're lighting it before Shabbat comes in. That creates a problem for Hanukkah Friday night, because the Hanukkah lights are supposed to be lit after it's dark outside, but the Shabbat candles have to be lit before it's dark outside. And you can't light Hanukkah candles later. So what do? I'm just going to tell you what the rule is. I don't know how many Jews at home do this. I know Orthodox Jews typically follow these rules. We follow these rules in our house. So what you do is you light your Hanukkah candles first, because once you light your Shabbat candles, Shabbat has come in. So you have to light the Hanukkah candles first. That means you need to have Hanukkah candles that burn for about an hour and a half, because that first hour will take you from before sunset until it's dark outside. That's about an hour. And then it'll be dark outside. So then it has to burn for another half an hour. So you can't use the regular box candles for Hanukkah. What you can do, what I used to do, is cut the Shabbat candles in half. Now they're 2-hour candles. You can use those. Or if you want to keep it simple, and I highly recommend keeping it simple, use tea lights. Right? Those are already, they come in little dishes, little foil dishes. So you line up your tea lights to be like a menorah, and you light the tea lights. They'll burn for 3-4 hours. That's plenty of time. So you line them up so it looks like they're in a row, so it looks like they're a menorah, and you light those first with the Hanukkah blessings, and then you light your Shabbat candles. So that's technically how you would solve that problem. Let me go back to the rules. So anyway, so there's a lot about lighting candles. You light the candles, you're going to say the blessings, and Diane will go over the blessings in the next hour that you recite when, or you sing when you do them. And as I mentioned, the videos will be doing this, the week of Hanukkah, each of the rabbis will take turns lighting candles and doing it with the blessings. What is practical Hanukkah? So you're lighting the Hanukkah candles. And oh, the shamash candle, right? I didn't explain that. So you've got this extra candle here. So we tell kids that this extra candle is the service candle and it's used to light the other candles. And that's true. One of the rules is you're not supposed to use these other candles for any purpose other than looking at them and remembering the miracle of the oil or the miracle of the Maccabean victory, the Hanukkah story. Right? You're supposed to remember and thank God for being here today as Jews. That's their whole purpose. They're like neon signs flashing, the miracle story. Don't use them to read. Don't use them to for any other and certainly not to light each other with. And you're using it for another purpose other than just looking at it. So you have an extra candle here that you can. This isn't for the purpose of advertising the miracle. This one is one that you can use. So you use this one to light the other ones with. And it's called the shamash candle, which means the user candle or the utility candle. However, it also serves another purpose, right? So Jews are a religion of lawyers. And in the old days, oil was not cheap for some people. It was costly to have oil or to have candles. And this may be the only light in your house. How can you tell the family not to use the Hanukkah lights for light if it's all the light they got? So what you do is you light this extra candle. And now you have a legal fiction that the light you're using is that candle's light. And if the other lights are mixed in, well, okay, they're mixed in. Nothing you can do about that. You're not using their light. You're using the light of the shamash candle, the light you're allowed to use. And that is another purpose for having the shamash. Okay, so it serves that purpose as well. Okay, so that's the shamash candle. What else do we want to talk about here? Okay, so there's a custom of using dreidels. In my talk, which I think is Wednesday night, I'm going to talk about the history of the dreidel, which is a gambling game. Jews are not supposed to gamble, but this is a gambling game that the rabbi said was okay to play on Hanukkah for nuts or small coins, not for big money. And there's a particular way to play it. I think it's described in some of the handouts I have here. And I also describe it in the video that I do on Wednesday night. We also eat latkes and donuts because of the oil. And we do have presents and parties and decorations. One of the members of our congregation has a house called the Hanukkah House. And you can actually Google it. It's been in the local news media. It's even been on TV. And it's right behind the Meyerland Plaza. So it's called the Hanukkah House, and they really do Hanukkah up. I mean, it's a huge, all kinds of lights and fancy things in their yard, and they play music. There's a button you can push and it plays Jewish music. It's pretty fancy decoration. And again, I don't see anything wrong with that. We're celebrating Hanukkah. It's the festival of lights. We're supposed to be happy and celebratory. So I'm cool with it. And it's the Hanukkah House. And it's kind of fun that it's one of our members that we have doing that house. I think that's pretty much all I need to say about Hanukkah. Do you have questions for me? I talked a lot already, so just, Let me think if there's anything else yeah?
Are there any other foods typically eaten for Hanukkah? I really like food.
Yeah, right. Unfortunately, because of the thing, it's usually stuff fried in oil, which is the unfortunate part for people who, like me, have to be careful what we're eating. But other than that, Well, something that other people do is they make sugar cookies. That's, you can use cookie cutter things. And there are cookie cutter shapes that you can get at a Jewish store, you can get at Amazon, that have the shape of dreidels and menorahs and Jewish stars and whatever. So you can make cookies that are stamped that way and then put the colored sprinkles on them, things like that. People also make dreidel. This is kind of another project people do. They take stick pretzels and marshmallows and Hershey Kisses, right? So you stick the Hershey Kiss on the bottom of the marshmallow and the pretzel on the top, and it looks like a dreidel. So, I mean, there's things like that. You probably can do Google Hanukkah foods and you'll find other things, but there are some kind of fun things like that that people do. Oh, one of the things I mentioned again in my video, we made, do they still have the Mad Potter? Has anybody heard of that? The Mad Potter? No? There was one in Meyerland. It basically is a place that does clay, makes clay molds. And then families can go in and they give you all the different clay paints, colored glazing paints, and you paint the mold any color you want to do it, and then they fire it for you and give it back to you, and for a fee, do whatever you want. So they, if they're still around, I don't know if they're still around, but they had a mold for a Hanukkah menorah, one for a dreidel, one for an Elijah's cup. So they had, and a Seder plate. They had a few Jewish items that you could do, and you can decorate your own. And so we did that. We made a menorah for ourselves from them. I don't know if they still exist. Anybody know? People don't seem to do arts and crafts too much anymore, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I've heard of them. Maybe not that one exactly, but the same concept, kind of.
Yeah, so let's see. Any other questions about Hanukkah?
Yes, Rabbi. Hi, good morning. I wanted to ask if the type of cooking oil, can we use canola oil or vegetable oil to fry?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, of course, purists may want the olive oil, but olive oil has a flavor which is really nice, but it may not make the best cookies, or it's probably pretty good. It's also more expensive. So yeah, you can use any kind of oil you want for frying food, for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions about Hanukkah? So I hope you'll be able to catch the videos and the other Hanukkah things we're doing this coming year. Since we're not able to meet together in person, that's another way to get connected with the community. Anybody else?
Yes, Rabbi, one more question from me. I'm sorry. All this stuff that it's coming up, it's going to be through Zoom, right? Are we going to be getting the links?
Okay, so that is a good question. If you are, if you're not getting weekly emails from Beth Yeshurun, then let's see. Let me share the screen here again and go to my let's see, where can I go to the website? Shoot, trying to find the website here. All right, hold on one second. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna open up a website here and go to Beth Yeshurun. Okay, and now we're gonna go. Okay, now I'm gonna go back to share screen, and here, boom. Okay, so you're gonna go here and go to, I guess the best place is virtual community. Let's try that. Right, stay connected. So see this happenings? This keeps you up to date. So if you fill out this happenings form, Since I logged in and it's already logged in under my name, it already tells me what I'm subscribed to. But normally if you go to this page, it'll allow you to put in your name and your email address, and you can subscribe to getting the weekly emails. And the weekly emails will tell you what's coming up during the week and give you links for everything. But if you don't have that, what I'll do is I'll make sure when they send out the happenings this week, I'll forward that to everybody. I'll forward that email to everybody on this list, so you'll get that. Yeah, so
Thank
you'll
you.
know. Yeah, that's a good point. Do you need to log in to register for any of the other events? You don't necessarily need to log in, but you should be able to log in. Hopefully, if you haven't logged in before, I believe everybody's email address has been entered into our system. So the first time you log in, it'll ask you to confirm or something like that, your name and whatever, and then you're registered. And then whenever you go to that page, it'll automatically log you in and your information will be inserted for whatever you want to do. But I don't think you need to, very few events require a login, right? Yeah, so this is what Jennifer is writing to me. Attending services requires logging in. So if you want to attend in person, you have to, and you should, again, your email address should be recognized by our system so that you can create an account for yourself. But you don't need to do that from almost anything we do. Any other questions? So was this helpful to understand about Hanukkah? Okay. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a happy Hanukkah. It starts Thursday night. So Thursday night, first night of Hanukkah. We got to jump on Christmas this year. And oh, yes, one other thing Jennifer wrote me. If you have trouble logging in, you can email help, H-E-L-P, at bethyshurun.org, and they'll fix it for you. Okay. All right. Anyways, take care, everybody, and we'll see you next week, I think, right? We're meeting again next week. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Ah.
Shalom.
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 Well,
Shalom.
it's nice to see everyone. So, Steve went over Hanukkah blessings, the blessings for the Hanukkah menorah, the Chanukiah. Yes.
Yes, he did.
Would you like to go over that before we do our other stuff?
Yes, please.
Okay. So let's see. I'm going to share my screen. I really am not good at sharing screen, but I'll do my best. Let's see. Here we go. Oh my, how do I deal with that? I don't even know how to do that. Let's go back. Let's see if there's one that's right side up. We're all sideways. Oh, thank goodness. Now the print is microscopic. Can you see it? Can you see the print?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. All right, so place the candles as shown in the diagram, right? So every day we put in, starting in this direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So the first night, there's the shamish and candle number 1, right? And we put it near the window so people can see it. That's good. After lighting the shamish and before lighting the other candles, we say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Chanukah. So, if you would just repeat each phrase after me, you can either follow the Hebrew here, or you could follow the transliteration. Okay? Baruch atah Adonai. Now you sing that.
Baruch
atah
Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam
Eloheinu melech
haolam
asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav
asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav
v'tzivanu lehadlik ner
v'tzivanu lehadlik ner
shel Chanukah. Now, it's kind of a Jewish thing to sing everything, all of our prayers, everything is sung, our Torah portions are sung, our Haftarah portions are sung, everything's sung. However, it's also a Jewish thing that plenty of people sing out of tune. So I don't want you to feel bad about singing out of tune. You just have to sing, right? You do not have to sing in tune unless you're able to, right? Some proportion of the population doesn't sing in tune. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And even for people who don't think of themselves as singers, after doing this for a few years, you'll find that you're getting more and more in tune. So don't worry about it. Don't even make being in tune an issue for you or sounding like a professional or something. You know, nowadays people think they have to sound great to sing out loud, but it's really not part of, you know, what we're about culturally. We just always chant these blessings. And if you chant them beautifully, that's wonderful. And if you don't, that's wonderful too. What counts is that you're doing them. So after you sing the blessing, you light the candles, right, from left to right. And then we go down to the next bracha, right, which is what we sing after we lit the candles. And you'll notice it's the same melody. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim lavotenu bayamim hahem ba'uzman hazeh. Okay. Uvzman hazeh. I wanted to say Bazman hazeh. Okay. So now I'm going to sing a phrase at a time and you sing it after me. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch atah
Eloheinu melech haolam.
Eloheinu melech haolam
She'asa nisim.
she'asa nisim
Lavotenu. Ayamim hahem.
bayamim
Uvazman hazeh.
Uvazman hazeh.
Okay. You know, I think depending on where you see these brachot, there might be some very small differences in the uvizman hazeh, uvizman hazeh, or just not having the u there at all. So, okay. And now we're on the last bracha, which we only say on the first night. And maybe you will recognize this blessing from other contexts. We sing it on the first night of holidays after, you know, lighting candles, and then again after saying Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Oh, what's this prayer called? Who knows the name of this prayer? No, it's called the Shehecheyanu. That's what this prayer is referred to, which is kind of at the beginning of the second half of the prayer, right? First, we do the formula for the prayer, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, which is at the beginning of almost any blessing. And then the first word of this particular blessing is Shehecheyanu, which means who has kept us alive. So now I'll sing a little at a time and you sing it after me. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam.
Eloheinu melech haolam
Shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higianu Lazman hazeh. And we have some beautiful voices in this group, don't we? And that's all I'm going to do for now. So I know this synagogue is planning on sending out videos every day that you could light with. If you could light candles with their videos if you wanted to. And so if I were you, I would record it onto my desktop. And that way I could, or just record it on your phone. And that way you'll have, you know, you'll be set for practicing it. But anyway, I know that they're going to have a video for each day. Somebody sent chats and I didn't see them. Oh, I'm feeling great. Thank you for asking. You know, I got a negative test result.
Baruch Hashem.
I got a negative test result. So I don't know if I even, you know, it's hard to say. I don't know if I even had COVID because I was never really symptomatic in that way. But first I tested positive and then a week later I tested negative. So who knows? But anyway, I'm good to go. So thank you for
That's wonderful news.
Thank you. Thank you. Pretty big relief. Okay, now we can read Hebrew. So let's see, I think, I'm not 100% sure. Can somebody remind me, somebody who was here for the last class, did we do Ve'ahavta or did we do Havdalah? I don't remember.
We did have the laugh.
Toda Rabba. Thank you very much. Toda Rabba. Okay, so I think I'm just going to very quickly review Havdalah because they record these classes. And so people who missed can go to the website and watch our last class to review chapter 5. But let's just quickly look at it because there were a few people who weren't here last week. So Havdalah, as it says, means a separation. And it's a word that's used all the time in modern Hebrew in different forms, lehavdil, right? To make a distinction or to separate, lehavdil. And we learned 2 new consonants and we learned a vowel in Havdalah. We learned the vet consonant, which looks just like a bet, except we said vet is vacant, right? That means it's empty. It doesn't have a dot. Vet is vacant because it doesn't have a dot in it. And we learned dalit, and dalit sounds like a D. Dalit actually means door. But can somebody tell me what letter does dalit look like that we already know?
Is it Rush?
Yes, I would agree. It's like a resh. Yes. So that is that's the letter that you are most likely to confuse the dalit with, is a resh. But you can see that the dalit has a little feather in its cap, right? It extends back sort of beyond the stem, and resh is rounded. Resh is rounded. So you can help, that will help you remember. Resh is rounded, right? Dalit has an angle there. And vet can also be confused with another letter. What other letter besides bet could you confuse vet with?
Bet.
You could confuse vet with bet, and you could confuse vet with, I think you said chaf. Is that what you said? That's correct. Chaf. You could confuse vet and chaf. And what is the difference in appearance between vet and chaf?
Half
The
is
bottom,
more round.
yeah, and the bottom line.
Right, vet has like a straight line at the bottom, and chaf is curved. Although if I wanted to remember this, I would say chaf is curved. Anyway, it's curved at the bottom. Chaf is curved at the bottom, right? And vet, it has a straight line at the bottom. Okay. Remember we said vet is vacant and bet has a button. Okay. And then the vowel that we looked at in chapter 5, next to the dalid, it looks just like a patach with a shva next to it. In other words, it looks like the ah vowel with the shva, or normally silent vowel. And when you see that vowel, you can ignore the shva. It's there for reasons of grammar, and just pronounce the vowel that you're familiar with, the ah. So it's pronounced like any other ah vowel, okay? Okay. So that being the case, we're going to continue on the top of page 25. What I'd like to suggest is maybe just scanning this exercise on page 25 just for a minute and writing in a V or a D every place where you see a vet or a dalid. So in number 1, if you just take a second to find the vet or the dalid that might be in number 1 on page 25, and just write a V or a D over those letters so that you recognize them. And then the same on number 2, if you see a vet or a dalid in number 2, you should label it. Number 3, the same. If you see a vet or a dalid, etc. I'll give you about 30 seconds. Any place where you see a vet or a dalid, you should label them. Okay, here we go. So we're going to be reading from right to left. So we're going to say the 2 syllables in each word separately, and then we're going to say them together. So this is what I want to do. I'm going to say the first syllable, clap twice, and say the second syllable, clap twice, and then we'll say the word. So I'll do number 1 as an example. Sha, val, shaval, like that. And why am I doing that? It's so that we all kind of stay together and we give ourselves a little time to process the information, right? If we rush through it, we don't have time to process. So let's do line 2 like that. Okay, here we go. Ka, la, ka, la. Number 3, shav, ra. Let's hear it. What is it?
Shara.
Shavra. Good. Okay, number 4. So I'm going to let you do the word put together, right? I'll do the 2 syllables with you, but you'll do the final word yourself. So we're on line 4. It's all about putting syllables together, right? That's what this exercise is. All right. Line 4. Lam, la,
Lama.
Lamra.
oh, okay. I just heard what I call a smart mistake or a good mistake. It's one that leads to learning. What is the letter that looks like a dalid?
Resh.
Reish.
Reish. Okay, so
Or
because we're on Zoom, I couldn't tell you who mixed up Reish and Dalet, but there were some people who mixed up Reish and Dalet. How do we know that this is Dalet and not Reish?
It's got a feather in its cap.
Yay, it's got a feather in its cap. Or you could say, well, Reish is rounded, right? And this letter is not rounded. So let's do it again. Okay? Lam, da,
Da.
Lambda.
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 lambda. Good. Okay, number 5. Bach, ta,
Bach. Ta.
Ta.
good. Okay, line 6. Ra, ma,
Rama.
Metsuyan. Okay, you're doing well. Number 7. Ta, ha,
Ha.
yeah, that was correct. Now, in English, we have this enormous range of how we say the A vowel, from A, and ah, right? So we have many, many ways of saying that vowel sounds. But in Hebrew, it's just ah, ah. Like what you say when the doctor says, open your mouth and say ah. I don't know if any of you have a doctor who says that anymore. When I was a kid, the doctor said that. So, but anyway, it's ah. So if you can think of any word that has an ah vowel, just think of a word that you know that has ah in it. Right? I think I saw in the back of one of the alphabet sheets that I gave you that it said ah, like in father. But I can think of words that have O in English that have the ah sound, like job or rock, right? It really has an ah sound. So find a word that has the ah sound and rely on that word whenever you forget how to say the vowel. Does anyone want to give me a word in either English or Spanish that has the ah sound as an example?
It could be in Spanish. The one for house is casa.
Perfect. That is a perfect example of the vowel casa. Yes, it's a nice round, bright ah. So that's very good. Okay. Hopefully you'll all come up with your own example that you can just fish out every time you need the ah vowel. Okay. Anyway, I'm going to do line 7 again, okay? Ha, ha,
Kaha.
right. Ha, ha. That's correct. Okay. Line 8. Hach,
Ha.
bara.
Habara.
Bara.
Good.
Para.
It's hard getting the in, isn't it?
Para.
Right. Okay. Line 9. Da, var.
Dabar.
Davar.
Good.
Okay.
Line 10.
Dabar.
That was
Got
right. Bera, ha.
Beraha.
Bera.
Good. Beracha. What is a beracha?
Blessing.
A
Blessing.
blessing. Good. 11. Oh boy, this is complicated. So I want to remind you that if there were two shvas in the middle of a word, we would pronounce the second shva. If there were two shvas in the middle of the word, we would pronounce the second shva. And if there was a consonant that had a dagesh in it, in other words, a dot in the middle of it, we would pronounce the shva underneath. So here we have on line 11, a tav. It's at the end of a word. It has a shva under it and a dot in it, a dagesh in it. And it's the second of two shvas. If this was in the middle of the word, for sure, I would pronounce the vowel under the tav. I would say te. But it's at the end of a word. And when you have shva at the end of a word, it's always silent. Even if there is a dagesh in the consonant, it's silent. So even though I might want to say chasht, it's not chasht, right? It's just chasht, right? There's no vowel sounds at all. Okay, I'm going to do 11 and then you do the completed word. Ra, chasht.
Rahasht.
Rahasht.
Nachon, ra, chasht.
Rahasht.
Terry, is that Terry or are you Michelle? You're Michelle or Terry?
Rahasht.
I love your Hanukkah pillow. That is so nice.
Thank you.
Was that a gift?
No, actually, I bought it at at Hallmark.
Oh, that's so nice because it kind of puts me in the mood seeing the pillow there. That's awesome. Okay, so anyway, back to Hebrew. 11 we said was rachasht. Rachasht. Okay.
Rahash.
Good. Good. Okay. Line 12. Ma rad.
Marad.
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 Wait, that's a resh, not a
Good.
dalit, though.
You're I'm wrong. I need stronger glasses. Clearly, 2.75 is not doing it anymore. You're absolutely right. Thank you. Yes, it's marar, which means bitter. Okay. Marar. Thank you.
Marar.
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 Right. Marar.
Rar.
Okay, now on to page 6. I mean,
Page-
chapter 6, page 26.
You shall love.
Okay, right. So this is the first paragraph of the Shema prayer. Ve'ahavta, and you shall love. And if you look in the middle of this word, the letters Aleph, Hey, Vet are the root for many, many, many words that have to do with love. Okay, so ve'ahavta is just one of the words we see in the Torah about love. There's a prayer that goes, Ahavat Olam, eternal love, or Ahava Rabbah, great love. You'll hear many forms of this word in the prayer book. Okay, so everybody just repeat that word after me. Ve'ahavta.
I can't.
Ve'ahavta.
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 Good. Okay, so our new letters are the straight line with a little curve at the top at the beginning of the word, and the letter next to it, which looks kind of like somebody who's doing a lunge position. Doesn't that look kind of like a lunge, right? With one foot in front and one leg in back. So the aleph looks a little bit like somebody doing a lunge with an arm up in the air. That's what it looks like to me, right? If I was gonna like do aleph yoga, I wish you could see my legs. That's aleph. Aleph is doing a lunge. Okay. And aleph is silent. All aleph does is take a vowel. It just takes the vowel sound and kind of holds the place in a word and takes the vowel sound, but it's really silent. So, and vav can be confusing for a few different reasons. Sometimes vav turns into a vowel. Do any of you know some vowels that vav sometimes turns into? Sometimes vav sounds like an O, and sometimes vav sounds like an oo, but we're not there yet. I'm just pointing it out. Here, vav functions as a consonant, and what other letter has the same sound as vav?
Vet.
Vet, very good. And what letter does vav resemble?
Oish.
Resh.
Yes, it resembles resh. It looks like a resh that maybe got a nose job, right? It's very short. It's a cute little turned up nose. So anyway, it's like a very narrow, skinny resh. All right. So ve'ahavta. So just out of curiosity, under the vav in ve'ahavta, I am pronouncing the shva under the vav, ve, at the beginning of the word. Why is it in the vet, which is the fourth letter in the word, why am I not pronouncing that shva? I'm saying ve'ahavta, right? I'm not saying ve'ahavta. I'm just saying ve'ahavta. Why is the second shva silent?
Because it's in the middle.
It is a single shva all by itself in the middle of a word, right? There's no shva before it. It's all by itself. And there's another clue, although that was very good. And that's the most important. Single shva, middle of a word, silent. But there's one other clue. There's no dagesh in the consonant. There's no dot in the consonant. If that vet were bet, we would pronounce the shva. If you have a shva under a letter that doesn't have a dagesh, it's almost certainly going to be silent. Okay, it needs a dagesh. Almost always, almost always. But at any rate, single shva in the middle of the word, silent, unless the consonant above it has a dagesh. Okay, so let's jump down to our exercises for aleph. And I'm just going to read the first line myself so you can see that the aleph doesn't really influence the sounds of these syllables. It's just a placeholder for vowels, because in Hebrew, you can't write a vowel unless you have a consonant. In English, there are words that begin with vowels like alone, right? There is no consonant for the first sound in that word alone, but every syllable in Hebrew needs to begin with a consonant. So even if the consonant is silent. So line 1, ah, 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 ah. Okay. I think that you can all read that, but go for it. Line 1 on page 26. Very good. Okay. Line 2. Ah, sha, le, a, ra, ve. Can you read it? Is that too many syllables? Ah,
Sha,
le,
le,
a,
ra, ve.
ve. Good. Okay. Line 3. So I'll read it once by myself and then you can read it with me. Ah, ha, ah, da, che, re. Ah,
Ha,
ah, da, che,
e,
re. Good. Line 4. Okay. First question in line 4. Under the tav, in the first little word there, am I pronouncing that tav? Am I pronouncing the shva or is the shva silent?
You're
It's
pronouncing it.
pronounced because he has the dot in the middle.
You would think so. Shouldn't I pronounce it? There is a dot in the middle of the consonant. Shouldn't I pronounce it?
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could. I really want to. But there's like a second rule, which is if it's at the end of a word, then no matter what, I can't pronounce it. So if I saw a tav with a dot in it and a shva underneath in the middle of a word, I would pronounce it. But if it's the very last letter in the word, that means it's a kind of special ending and it's not pronounced. I only pronounce the consonant and I don't pronounce the shva. So you had every reason to think I should pronounce it, but because it's at the end of the word, I can't. So that is an annoying rule, but there you go. And my first Hebrew teacher didn't bother teaching me that. I had to be embarrassed in another class before I learned that. So I'm sparing you the future embarrassment by telling you now. So it's silent at the end of a word, even when it looks like it should be pronounced. And good for you for noticing that. With the dagesh and the tav, you would think it would be. Okay, line 4. At, la, ba, av. Okay, with me? At,
At,
la,
la,
ba,
ba,
av.
av.
Tov me'od. Okay, line 5. Ba, a, ra, a, amar, sha'al. With me? Ba, a, ra, a, amar, sha'al. Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, now we are going to practice on the top of 27. 1, 2, and 3 on the top of 27. So first of all, we're going to assume that we're pronouncing the shva when it appears in line 1, because Vav with a shva underneath is an extremely common prefix in Hebrew words. I mean, it's hard to imagine a prayer that doesn't have this prefix in front of one of the words. Does anybody know what ve or va at the beginning of a word means? And, A-N-D. I mean, in Philadelphia, it's and, and, A-N-D. It means and. Okay, so va means and ve just means and. Okay, so let's practice reading line 1 together. Va, ve, va, va. Let's do it again so that I can hear you.
Va,
Va,
ve,
va. Good. Okay. Line 2. Okay. I just want you to notice that there is a dalet and a resh in line 2. And there is a vet and a chaf in line 2. Okay? Here we go. A, de, va, re, che, ha. Can you do it with me now? A, de,
de,
va, re,
re,
che,
re,
ha. And line 5. Let's see what lookalikes. Oh, look, we have them. We have 2 vets. We have vav, vav, vet, vet, resh, dalid. See that? Here we go.
mhm,
Va, va,
va,
ve, ra, de. Now with me. Va,
va,
ve,
ve,
ra, de. Good. Okay. So I'm not going to do 27 in the middle of the page where it says chunk it right now. However, I would encourage anyone who wants to do exercise, the chunk it and word match exercises on page 27. To do them, take a little picture and text me with your results. And I would be glad to go over your homework if you do that. So let me just remind you of my phone number. I'll put it in chat again. Okay, there's my phone number. So you can text me the exercises, chunk it and word match if you'd like, and I'd be very glad to take a look at them. It's a very good and worthwhile skill to divide a word into syllables because it really, really helps with your reading. And I would say when you find a single shva in the middle of a word, that is almost always the end of a syllable. The only exception is if there is a dagesh in the consonant. A dagesh in the consonant almost always means it's the beginning of a syllable. So if there's a dagesh in a consonant, it's almost always the beginning of a syllable. If there's a shva under a consonant, it's almost always the end of a syllable. When you have a dagesh in a consonant over a shva, it's the beginning of a syllable. Is that like too much to take in? I hope it's not. But we'll keep doing it over and over again, and I think it'll get easier and easier. And the reason I'm emphasizing beginnings of syllables is it will help with your reading. So, okay. So let's see. Oh, this is a great exercise. Let's go to the bottom of page 29. I'm just reading what Terry wrote. Let's see. Yes, you know, I want to encourage everyone to seek out extra Hebrew opportunities besides this class, because doing an hour a week is really not the most ideal way to gain proficiency, but rather to open yourself up to all of the resources that are out there. And I think I mentioned that I really like Duolingo, if I'm saying it right, which is a really, really nice free computer app. And Hebrew Pod 101 on YouTube has great reading and conversational Hebrew resources as well. So thank you, Terry, for posting. When people find stuff like that, it's great to share it, okay? And, you know, let us know if you're finding apps that are useful to you. Okay, let's take a look at the bottom of 29. Has anybody been filling it in? Okay, it's pretty obvious which letter in each pair makes no sound at the bottom of 29. Which letter is that?
Aleph.
Aleph. Okay, so in line 1, what is the Hebrew letter and what is the sounds? Because we've crossed out all our olives. Can somebody do this exercise for us? Would somebody be willing to do it? Okay, Linda, thank you.
Okay, Bet, Ba, Mem,
Good.
Tet,
Right, except it's tav.
I'm
Wait,
sorry.
Tet also sounds like a T.
I almost said that.
Yeah.
Okay, Tav, and then the other one is Tav also.
Right.
And then Kaf,
Good.
Resh,
Good.
Ba, Shin, Sh, Lamed, U, Hey, Ha, Va, Vet, Va, Dalid, Da, and Chaf. Ha.
Good, Mitsuyan, that was excellent. Ooh. What time is it? Hurry. Okay, I think we'll just stop there. And if anybody, for example, would like to do the reading practice on 28 or on 29 and record it and send me your reading, I would also be very, very happy to go over any reading exercises that people do. Or you can text me if you'd like to do it on the phone with me. So, but you've already got my phone number, right? I sent it a couple of minutes ago. It's in the chat. So I would love it if you would put me in your contacts so that.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Do you mind putting your phone number in the chat so that way we can have it?
I did put it in the chat. Doesn't it show up there? Here it is.
Oh, let me see. I'm sorry.
Can you see it? I'll just do it again. It's no problem.
Oh, I appreciate you. Thank you. Oh, there it is. Okay.
You found it?
Yes, I found it. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, 713-569-4650. Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anybody who wants to go over something privately, wants to read something for me privately, doesn't understand something, please, or wants something a little bit more challenging, please just feel free to call. Now, we didn't sing our Aleph Bet song, so can we all go back and do our Aleph Bet song on page 95? Okay, are you ready? Aleph Bet Fet.
Aleph, Bet,
Gimel Dalet Hey.
Gimel Dalet Hey.
Vav Zayin Chet Tet.
Zayin Het
Yod Kaf Chaf.
Yod Kaf
Lamed Mem Nun.
Lamed Mem Nun
Samech Pei Fei.
Samech Pei Fei
Sadi Kuf Resh.
Sadi Kuf Resh.
Shin Sin Tav.
Jin Sin Tav.
Nice. Now, can somebody sing it for the rest of us? We'll be your echo. Any volunteers?
I volunteer. Oh, sorry. No, you
Nikita,
go ahead.
are you volunteering?
Yeah, I can volunteer.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right, here we go. Aleph, Bet, Bet.
Aleph,
Bet,
Bet,
Bet.
Bet.
Gimel, Dalet, Hey.
Gimel, Dalet, Hey.
Vav, Zayin, Het, Tet.
Vav,
Zayin
Zayin, Het, Tet.
Yod, Kaf, Chaf.
Yod, Kaf, Chaf.
Lamed, Mem, Nun.
Lamed, Mem, Nun.
Samech, Chayin, Pei. Is it Fei?
Samech, Chayin, Pei, Fei.
Zadi, Kuf, Resh.
Sadi Kuf Resh.
Sin, Shin, Tav.
Shin Sin Tav. Woo! Toda rabah. That was really nice.
Thank you.
Let me just review a couple things that we did a few weeks ago. So I'm going to ask you, Manishma. Manishma. Does anybody remember what that means?
How are you?
How are you? And we had a few responses. Does anybody remember any of those responses?
One was, oh God, I don't remember. Never mind.
Baruch Hashem.
Right. I heard two correct responses. Baruch Hashem. That's like praise God. That's like, it could be anything from fantastic to, well, I don't want to complain. Anything in that whole range is Baruch Hashem. So, you know, sometimes you really don't want to complain. You really want to be positive. So Baruch Hashem. So how's another way, a less positive way of saying not so great? Does anybody remember?
Ha 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 ha.
Right, very good. Kacha, kacha, and it often goes with this hand gesture. Kacha, kacha, right? Manishma, kacha, kacha. And then, well, if everything's great, manishma.
Toe to toe.
Close, very close. Tov, toda.
Oh.
Toda. What's toda?
Thank you.
Thank you. Tov, toda. Good, thank you. Tov, toda. And you could also say Baruch Hashem when everything's great. You could. Baruch Hashem, woo! But I would say it's more often that people say Baruch Hashem when they don't want to complain. And there's this idea that God has his reasons for doing things. So we praise God even when times are tough because we trust in God. And so that's kind of where Baruch Hashem comes from. It comes from like faith, deep faith, that there is a reason for everything. Baruch Hashem. Okay. And did I tell you how to ask somebody their name?
No.
So if you're asking a woman her name, you would ask her, well, actually, this is the easiest way to do it. There's different ways to do it. The easiest way of asking somebody who they are is if you're talking to another woman, or if you're a man talking to a woman, you would say, Mi at, who are you? Mi at. Okay, so if somebody asks me, Mi at, I would say, Ani Diane. Ani Diane. I am Diane. So a man or a woman would have the same response. Ani, I am. So why don't we just go around the screen here and maybe people can say Ani and their name. If you have a Hebrew name, you can use your Hebrew name. If not, whatever name you go by, right? I said Ani Diane. My Hebrew name is Tehillah, so I could say Ani Tehillah, but I said Ani Diane. So Nicole, can I start with you? Mi at.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is in the response, is it an in sound or an im sound?
It's an N. Ani.
Ani.
Ani? I'm sorry, I forgot it.
Oh, so you say Ani, which means I am, and then your name.
Oh, Ani Nicole?
It's Yan. Okay, who will go next? Can you raise your hand if you'll go next?
I can go next.
Oh, Toda. Okay.
I need Mimi.
Good. Ani Mimi. Perfect. Will somebody else volunteer?
I'll go next. We'll go.
Okay, bevakasha.
All right.
At
Ani Melba.
Ani Josh.
Metsuyan. Shalom, Melba Vijosh.
Thank you.
Okay, who else? Linda, I already know your name, but at.
Ani Leah.
Oh, at Leah. Shem Yafet. At Leah. Okay. Anybody else?
Ani Terry.
Good. Ani Terry. Good. Ani Terry. Very good. Anybody else?
Ani Atom.
Ata Adam. Mitsuyan. Ata Adam. You are Adam. Shalom, Adam. Okay, very good. Yes, to the person who's asking, I would encourage everyone to choose a Hebrew name. Do people need help choosing Hebrew names?
Yeah.
Send you a link that has a list of Hebrew names. So there's different ways of choosing Hebrew names. Some people name themselves after a person, right, who has a Hebrew name. Like there's a figure in the Ani Moshe. That works, Ani Moshe. But Moshe is for a man, right? Ani Moshe. So you can find a biblical figure that you admire and name yourself after that biblical figure. You could pick a value, that means a lot to you, like ahava, love, right? And you could name yourself ahuva, which is related to the value ahava. So that's a way of doing it. Some people just pick names that sound cool. some people pick names that are kind of a Hebrew version of a name they already have. Michaela, did you have a question?
Yeah, are there certain names that are like off limits? Like I like the name Mihal, which was like the first wife of, I think, King David. And I like it, but I don't know if it's like off, like, you know, I don't
Yes,
know if it's like, okay or
I
not.
have known many Michals over the years. I think Michal is a perfectly good name.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Melba, did you have a question before?
No, I didn't. I was just raising my hand to participate when you asked.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. All right. Thanks. I think that's it for today. Yeah, it's even a little bit late. Thank you very much. I'm going to look at chat and see if anybody asked another question. Oh, no, that's fine.
Will you be putting up the
Thank
link
you.
for the Hebrew names?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to ask Rabbi Morgan to send that out. I think he usually does do that at some point, but I'll ask him to do it now because it would be fun if everyone in the class had a Hebrew name. So I would enjoy that. Okay, well, have a Shavua Tov, a good week, and I will see you next Sunday. Okay, don't forget, you can send me homework if you want to, and you can request a lesson, a private lesson if you want to, okay?
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.